decided all those things really quickly. There's a lot that goes into getting things to county board meeting. There's a lot of work by staff, there's input by residents, there's studies and reports, and then often there's workshops and work by the commissioners prior to the board meeting too. But some of the really realistic things you're going to see today are the presentations by staff. Commissioners need to rely on staff for a lot of the technical work. We can't be experts on everything, and that's where the staff do such a good job on that technical stuff. And the other thing that's going to be true and real is the input from citizens. You guys are the citizens out there today, and hopefully you're going to have some questions and comments about the agenda items. So, all right, Scott County Board of Commissioners, take it from here.
The Future Leaders of Scott County Day Student Board of Commissioners meeting is called to order. I would like to welcome everyone to the mock student board meeting. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioners, please introduce yourself to the audience. State your first name and your school.
Hi, I'm Commissioner Jeremiah. I'm in 8th grade and I go to West Junior High.
Hello, my name is Kadar. I go to Hidden Oaks Middle School.
I am Commissioner Dorian. I go to Jordan High School.
I'm Commissioner Braden. I go to New Prague High School.
I'm Commissioner Rowan and I go to Twin Oaks Middle School.
The next item on the agenda is recognition of Future Leaders of Scott County Day volunteers. The Veteran Service Director will make a few comments and present the certificates on behalf of the board.
Are you first?
She was gonna help. Once again, the veterans here, they did a lot of the work that went into making this possible. So if we could just say a quick thanks and give them a quick round of applause. Thank you. And then we have a certificate for each of them, so we'll have you come up and get your certificate, and then I think they want to take some pictures, so if you could stay up here, that'd be great. First is Bernie Bauman. I know he was here. Bernie, did he leave? Okay. Dominic Emanuel.
And have the veterans stay up front, they want to take some pictures.
Marlis DeRose. Jim Cates. Georgine Ganson. Tom Menden. Tom's probably still eating pizza. Michelle Stewart. Mary Ryan. Oh, she left too. Bob Rowe. Michael Martin. Butch Mommer. Tim Loftus. Thank you. We'll fix that for you, by the way. John Hogan. John left as well. And Charlie Potts. And that is it.
On behalf of the student board and all of the student participants, I would like to thank each of you for your help with this event. Now, I would like to remind the students in the audience that the next topics on the agenda were available to you before the meeting. I hope that you took the time to read the materials and that you will share your questions and opinions with the student board. The next item on the agenda is a request to indicate the county's position on proposed legislation on year-round schooling. This item will be presented by the Public Affairs Coordinator.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I'm Lisa Kohner, your Public Affairs Coordinator, and I'm bringing to you today an issue that I really wanted to have on consent because I don't think it's very controversial at all. But County Administrator Ava suggested that I bring it directly to you. So that is why I'm here for you today to talk about the position on year-round classes for K through 12 students in Minnesota. I'm asking for your support for the Get Rid of Unsupervised Minors and Promote Education Act. It's been introduced by Representative Bummer and Senator Cranky, which would basically stipulate that Minnesota K through 12 schools would be required to hold year-round classes. Individual districts could opt to keep the same number of schools that are mandated right now, which is 160 days per Minnesota statute, or opt to increase them over the state minimum. Currently, the number of American school districts who have opted to move to that has increased by 26%, now over 3,700 nationally. So why? Why should we support this? Well, first of all, the 9-month school year is a historical oddity. The fact of the matter is that we don't need the kids to work on family farms anymore, and we don't have to worry about contracting dangerous diseases such as polio and such a thing. And now that with AC and sanitation, closed cramped quarters aren't really an issue during the summertime. Our students are falling behind their peers in Europe, India, China, and Japan. In fact, recent studies indicate that in math alone, American students rank 38th out of 71 countries, and in science, 24th out of 71. It eliminates the dreaded summer slide. You know, that kind of feeling where you think you see your kid's brain leaking out of the side of their head right about middle of June or July. It enhances the continuity and pacing of instruction. It provides better structure for students with special needs. And it helps low to moderate income families who might struggle with summertime costs. So you may hear the objection. What about students who choose to work during the summer months? They can still work nights and weekends. And the market will adjust accordingly and may actually benefit older workers because statistics show us that teen workers drive down wages for low-skilled jobs. What about summer camps, athletics, and other enrichment opportunities? Again, the market will adjust accordingly. Athletics can continue throughout the school year, as many do, and school districts may opt to include any or all of these opportunities during the regular curriculum. But what about good old-fashioned fun in the summer? Let's get real. How many people really get 3 months off during their lifetime? I mean, Santa, maybe? And honest, let's say most kids, I'm gonna go speculate, spend their summer playing Minecraft, Snapchatting, watching soap operas, and just generally getting in trouble, so. I ask you to support the Grumpy Act today. Do we have any questions? Hearing none, I assume that you're ready to vote then?
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have questions about the request? The chair recognizes Commissioner Kedar.
So how exactly would the days and scheduling work throughout the school year, the year-long school year?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Kedar, that would really be dependent on each individual school district. So some we opt to have 4-week breaks, 4-week breaks, 4-week breaks, or scatter them throughout the school year.
The chair recognizes Commissioner Braden.
So is this a mandatory for all schools to adopt, or is it optional for schools?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Braden, it would be a state mandate.
Is there anyone in the audience who has questions, comments, or input about the requests? Please state your name and school for the record.
My name is Riley Nardine. I live in Savage, Minnesota, and I go to Hidden Oaks Middle School, and I'm wondering, how does Scott County intend to respond to other counties' decreased tax base because of Scott County's approval of implementing year-round school? The state fair produces a large tax base for Ramsey County, resort taxes, and local economy stimulation for northern counties, such as St. Louis or Lake of the Woods. Scott County is a quickly growing county. How will you respond to this potential decreased tax levy? Increased staff requires increased tax dollars and not reduced.
Mr. Chair, should I answer that question?
Yes.
The free market is a wonderful thing, and it will accommodate.
Any other audience members? Please state your name and school for the record.
My name is Bethany Urkel, and I'm from Hidden Oaks Middle School. How would this act affect tourism the tourism industry and the economy? Because for example, Valley Fair is one place that is mainly, most of the jobs are supplied by teenagers during the summer, and most of the people that go there are teenagers. And also other places, like when people go up north to their cabins, they wouldn't be able to do that as much, and many of those places would not be are in locations that the housing market isn't high, and then there would be an excess of housing for sale, and many of them could be abandoned.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I'm going to rest on my previous comment that the free market does accommodate. And with intermittent series of breaks throughout the year, they will adjust accordingly. And when it comes to summertime and the resort season, how many families really take 3 months to go on vacation?
Yes?
When would school start officially? Like, what month? Would it start in January, at the beginning of the year?
Thank you, Administrator. That is not part of this legislation. I think that is yet to be determined, but it would make sense for it to run on a calendar year.
Okay, thank you.
It is time for the board to make a decision. Is there any Sorry.
Please state your name and school for the record.
Bella Carlson. I go to Hidden Oaks Middle School. In summer, many young kids will work in places near them and they will be able to walk, such as if I walk to Dairy Queen to work. In the winter, the weather does not permit for you to be able to walk to your job. There's not busing or very many transportation options within Scott County. How will transportation move to fit for many kids to be able to continue working and go to school?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Well, Scott County is expanding its transit options, and so that is something to be further explored. However, they can still walk to their jobs in the evenings and weekends during nice weather.
Please state your name and school for the record.
I'm Nora Rosemeyer, and I'm from New Prague High School. One of your main points was American schools are falling behind other countries, and I had a question. Are you sure it's because of timing? Because there's a lot of factors that include maybe a stricter school system in these other countries.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, she does raise a very interesting point because there are a lot of factors in this, but at the end of the day, this is one factor we can point to that is a distinctive difference, and I didn't want to imply in any way that American students were somehow inferior naturally.
Please state your name and school for the record.
My name is Cece Peter. I'm from Hidden Oaks Middle School, and my question is, how would this benefit kids who travel the world to see relatives in the summer? Some trips to, say, Asia, if they have relatives there, do take a month or more because you're not going to get to Asia and just want to spend like 3 days there. You spend all that time on the flight and getting there. My other question is, what about foreign exchange students? I'm pretty sure they're not going to want to spend their summer up here. If they come from the southern hemisphere, they're going to come into a very different climate because our seasons are opposite. How do you think that would affect them?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I'll take those in order. First of all, the schedule can accommodate for 4 weeks in a break. It just doesn't accommodate for 3 consecutive months. Second of all, the foreign exchange students are going through climate change shock regardless of where they're coming from when they come to Minnesota. So this would just be another factor.
Please state your name and school for the record.
My name is Isabel Ondrak, and I go to Hidden Oaks Middle School. I was wondering how this would allow people who are going to college or in high school to earn money to pay for their college, given that they will have less time to work. And I would also like to note that you say the market will accommodate, but what if it does not?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, how dare she suggest that the market doesn't freely accommodate these kinds of things? I'm shocked and appalled. But to answer the first question, again, money can be earned evenings, weekends, and other breaks, and hopefully, as students' GPAs rise as a result of this, they will actually qualify for more scholarships.
Please state your name and school for the record.
My name is Mary Bradfield, and I'm from St. Michael Catholic School in Prior Lake. I would like to ask, what about all those teachers that already have to work so hard during the school year? Would they get an increased salary, or because they already had to do so much? And sometimes not only the students need a break, but also the teachers and staff.
Mr. Chair's Commissioner, once again, there will be adequate amount of breaks throughout the 12-year school year. In addition, teachers may find there was a benefit to the fact that they don't have to go back and reteach for the first month in September everything that the kids have forgotten since June.
Please state your name and school for the record.
I'm Bella Carlson. I go to Hidden Oaks Middle School. The summer slide was brought up, but are there other ways that less drastic where kids can still enjoy their summer and work, but also change so the summer slide isn't so drastic? such as possible required schoolwork that will affect your grades when you come back. And also, students with special needs may be helped through this, but are there ways that they get their own special thing that their parents can put them in where they can still get the help needed to keep them on track without affecting all students?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I think that raises some interesting points, but to unify this as a mandate across the board and make it a universal structure, it puts everybody on a level playing field.
Please state your name and school for the record.
Bethany Urkel, Hidden Oaks Middle School. One of your major points was that students could still work weekends and evenings, but many students have homework and extracurricular activities that take up a lot of their weekends and evenings, and they often don't have much extra time to have a job during.
Mr. Chair, let's be honest here. When these kids are going to work, they're working for video games and play money. They're not working to support themselves, so they'll figure out a way to get that extra money one way or the other.
Please state your name and school for the record.
Riley Nordine, Hidden Oaks Middle School. You referenced how how we are falling behind educationally compared to other countries. Well, what about mental health compared to going to school year-round versus having the 3-month break?
Thank you. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I don't think there are a whole lot of crazy Australian students running around.
It is time for the board to make a decision. Is there any action?
I move to oppose. I move that the student board oppose the proposed legislative position on year-round schooling.
Is there a second to this motion?
I second this motion.
We have a motion and a second to oppose the proposed legislative position on year-round schooling. Is there any further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Braden?
Oh. Aye.
Commissioner.
A.
May I ask a question of the Deputy Clerk? What is the question at hand? To support opposing this or to support not opposing this?
To oppose.
Okay.
Commissioner Dorian?
Aye.
Commissioner Jeremiah?
Aye.
Commissioner Kadar?
Aye.
Commissioner Rode?
Aye.
Well, when your kids fail out of school, it's on you.
The motion passes. The next item on the agenda is a request to either approve or deny a policy that will determine whether or not drones will be allowed for personal recreation in Three Rivers Regional Parks in Scott County. Staff from the Parks Department will present the request.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, thank you for having me. My name is Nathan Moe. I'm the Parks Planner for Scott County. I want to talk a little bit about the regulations with drones that exist now and then share some of the thoughts we have from the Parks Department on future use. So we're not talking about the military type drones. Those are obviously something that is exclusive for that. We're talking about the home use drones, the one on the left and the right there. Those are the type that are becoming increasingly popular with recreational use, and any hobbyist might use them, or they're used for commercial purposes sometimes. But with the increase in popularity of these unmanned aerial vehicles, another term for them, we start to see them in the parks, and we need to respond to that use. But the regulations are still kind of developing. The FAA did recently, in 2018, they were granted control over airspace throughout the United States, and they did provide some guidelines. They recognize two major type of users: the hobbyist, which might be some middle school kids going out on the weekend and just hanging out with their friends, flying around, taking pictures, things like that. Or it could be certified commercial use pilots. We have some in the county here, and we have, I think we have one here, Jared in the back is a certified pilot, and he does some work with the county. He's got a couple of drones here. So I also want to share that there are two different types of drones that the FAA recognizes. The one on the right here is a size that needs to be regulated. It's over 0.55 pounds, and you need a registration with those. And if you're 13 and older, you can do that yourself. If you're under 13, you need to have a parent or guardian do that. The other type here is under 0.55 pounds and does not need that same regulation. They're a little harder to control. Wind takes them a little bit. So if there's any sort of high winds, you're going to have a little struggle with controlling those. So just kind of the overall guidelines federally, the intent is that they're used for fun and recreation, specifically for those hobbyists. It's a recommendation that they follow the safety guidelines of the model aircraft community. People have been flying those remote control airplanes for a long time, and there's a little bit more established guidelines for those, and that's something they're pointing to as something to keep in mind. But then more specifically, you can't fly over 400 feet. You need to maintain visual line of sight with the aircraft, and you're never flying with other aircrafts. And and something that comes up in the parks is that there's other people there, so you need to be careful about flying these unmanned aircrafts around other people. And then, of course, never fly over or near emergency response efforts. But we also, within the park district, have some rules that may apply. It's more in relation to those remote control aircrafts that I touched on earlier. And these are in your memos here. I'll just page through these pretty quickly, but it's essentially saying you shouldn't make unnecessary noises to disturb the peace and quiet in the park. You need to make sure that you're starting on a landing field, and you need to have a permit to use any sort of flying aircraft. You cannot use any sort of powered model aircraft, model boat, rocket, or powered toy without a permit in the parks. And then you should make sure that your use in the parks is not a disturbance to the wildlife. So we do have a little bit of use in the parks now. The two main reasons would be staff use. And that could be having our surveyors go out and take a look at a potential new park or a new area of the park for planning purposes. There might be some natural resources reasons to use it. And then you can currently apply for a commercial permit. Something like if you were having a wedding in one of our facilities and wanted to have the photographer also get some aerial photos. With an application and a fee, that is allowed currently. So we want to talk a little bit more about expanding that use to the recreational user. Should we allow recreational drone use within the parks without some of those other regulations of getting a fee and an application and things like that? And there are some good arguments for doing that. We want you guys to be able to get that sweet social media cred. You got to get lit pics, right? But maybe most importantly, from a parks perspective, we want this opportunity to attract new users. We want to make sure the parks are something that are for people of all ages. And if it happens that there's younger people that really want to get out in the parks and use drones, maybe that's something we consider adopting. We consider changing the regulations for that. There's also some good arguments against. Certainly there is a significant amount of noise, and the parks are generally these natural resources-based expansive areas where people can find that peace and solitude, and we wanted to have just a quick demonstration to get a sense of what that sound is like. So Jared's gonna power this up and give you a sense of the sound that it might give. And remember, this is one of the smaller ones, so the bigger ones might even be a little bit more noisy. And remember, these all have cameras on them too, so if you're having a picnic with your girlfriend or your boyfriend or something, somebody could be taking photos of what you guys are doing. All right. Thank you, Jared. So I did touch on that privacy piece. We want to make sure that we're not infringing on people's privacy, and most of these drones these days do have video and photo capabilities. And we are a natural resources based park, so park system. So we want to make sure that the wildlife is able to exist without disturbance from these aircrafts. And of course, there are occasions when safety is an issue. If somebody's out in heavy wind and they lose control of it and it comes and flies and hits somebody in the face or something, or maybe a child is using it and they lose control and they fly it right into a family having a picnic. So that's another thing to think about. So we are asking, should we approve or deny a policy that will determine whether to expand recreational drone use within our regional parks? And one last piece I wanted to touch on, there is a cost associated with a change of adding that recreational drone use, and that is $4,000 for signage and ordinance updates, and then another $1,000 for staff time. We brought this to our Parks Advisory Commission, and they were a split vote. 3 voted for expanding use, and 3 voted against. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have questions about this request?
Mr. Chair?
The chair recognizes Commissioner Braden.
So, as you touched on in safety, what about someone crashing it into another person or public property? What prevents the county from being liable for the damage to the drone and the person?
That's a good question. I think we would have to talk with our legal counsel about the implications of if there was an accident in the park. Do we have legal counsel in the room that wants to?
Mr. Chair?
The chair recognizes Commissioner Jeremiah.
What does certified pilot stand for? Does it mean someone that just knows how to drive a drone, or just?
Yeah, so the FAA has some guidelines on their website, and it talks about what the application process is, and it explains the rules that you would need to follow if you were to become certified.
Yes.
Would, if it was passed to allow recreational use of drones, would it be in all areas of the parks or just designated places for drone use?
Yeah, that's something we could consider if we had certain areas designated for drone use and other areas that were not allowed. I think that would be something we would consider.
The chair recognizes Commissioner Rowan.
Is there any specific times that drones can be flown, such as at day or during the day or at night?
I think, again, the county has the ability to, if we were to expand the use of drones, we could identify times of day that they would be allowed to be used.
The chair recognizes
Do you have a specific recommendation or opinion on whether recreational drone use should be allowed or not?
Thanks for asking. I certainly understand the benefits on both sides, and I think it's up to the board to make a decision on that, and weighing the two different arguments for and the arguments against are things that I'd like them to consider.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience?
I want to add an opportunity too for our public safety officer to speak on some of the instances of drone use that he's seen in the park, and maybe provide some opportunities for questions if you wanted to see his perspective as well.
Hi board, my name is Rashard Durley and I'm a Park Service Officer with Three Rivers Park District. So one of our main concerns is safety and protection of wildlife. So Three Rivers is very, very strict on preservation of wildlife and environment. So that would be our concern from a Park Service Officer standpoint.
Is there anyone in the audience who has questions? Please state your name and school for the record.
Parker Baines, Hidden Oaks Middle School. Let's say a family is walking in a park and they're using their drone to have fun, and the parents are not watching their 8-year-old, and the 8-year-old loses control of the drone and hits someone. The parents would be liable. Would an age requirement be put into place?
Thanks for that comment. I think that's a great consideration. If we're thinking of allowing this expanded use, maybe an age requirement would be something we would want to incorporate into that expanded use.
Please state your name and school for the record.
Michael Hennon, Jordan High School. So if you have an experienced flyer that perhaps lives in an apartment, what would be the problem with them flying in a public space? Because they can't just fly because they're living in an apartment. They don't have anywhere else to fly it.
Yeah, I think that touches on our previous point that it's an opportunity to attract an audience to the parks and expand use in the parks. Another good point.
Please state your name and school for the record.
Bella Carlson, go to Hidden Oaks Middle School. There are many people who would fly drones who would not be willing to follow the rules or regulations or pay any sort of fee if that is needed. Those people who would either be against it or not, if they choose to use their drones in other places, how will you help with safety issues there? Because if a drone came up flying past you as you're just walking in your own neighborhood, wouldn't that cause more safety issues than drones in parks?
One of the things that we'd have as power as a Park Service officer, we have the ability to issue citations. Although our primary concern is education, but we do have that authority to issue citations for any violations of park ordinances.
My name is Isabel and I'm from Hidden Oaks Middle School. And I noticed that you touched on attracting new audiences, but what about the older audiences that could be deterred from coming to the areas? Okay.
You have a photo to share with
Yeah. And then safety is a big aspect. This is baby Atticus, and he was hit by a drone, and he will have scars forever, most likely. And as well as privacy, because you don't know, because drones are practically anonymous without seeing who's flying them. So.
I think that's a great example of the risks that we take if we are to expand use for something like this. Thanks for sharing.
Please state your name and school for the record.
Bethany Urkel, Hidden Oaks Middle School. One of them.
Go back to the video. Is Deb in the room? I don't know how I got to the presentation. Thank you. Save the day.
One of the main concerns is the environment, and as he mentioned, many drones the smaller drones are hard to control and can be easily blown by the wind, and also oftentimes the smaller drones aren't made very well and can easily fall apart and could end up hurting animals and plant life through littering, and it could get into waterways.
Yeah, thank you for that comment. I think that illustrates one of the interesting points is that it would be hard to regulate the unregulated size of drones. Even if we were to have some sort of regulation that says only regulated pilots with their larger size drones were allowed, there's probably more prevalence of the unregulated size, and we would see their use increase along with the regulated size. So another thing to consider.
Please state your name and school for the record.
My name is Jade Lowy. I'm from Belle Plaine High School. I'd like to reference back to the point of banning drones and other motorized toys from parks without permits. I think the drones, that is a good point, because seeing as you should be able to have like a permit or something, and times such like from noon to 5 p.m. that you are allowed to use them. But I think that banning other toys, like a motorized boat or something, is a little bit excessive, because you could use that in a pond where there's no wildlife to damage.
I'll remind the board that the current regulation that already is established is that there are no other motorized use of boats, planes, and other types of rockets and things like that, as referenced in the earlier ordinance.
The chair recognizes Commissioner Braden.
So, kind of what you said, what prevents, say we allow drones, what prevents people who have a hobby of RC cars, RC boats, and rockets from saying, hey, this isn't fair, we want to also be able to use our, whatever you call them, remote operated toys.
Powered toys, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. Is it a slippery slope to start allowing for recreational use of drones, and then would we need to expand the use of other motorized toys? That's another thing to consider.
The chair recognizes Commissioner Kadar.
How would the restrictions be placed on bodies of water such as lakes and rivers and ponds?
Yeah, I think if people were to lose their drones in the water, it would be a significant concern. The batteries in them could corrode and cause some pollution. So, again, we could have regulations that would allow or that would restrict use over bodies of water, but it would be up to our public safety officers to enforce those, and we can only stretch ourselves so far. We have 2 public safety officers in Scott County, and they can only cover so much ground.
Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Commissioner Jeremiah.
How would the regulations work with vehicles or toys you could be using on water? Or would they have be something else?
So the current regulation states that it shall be unlawful for any person to start, fly, or use any fuel-powered model aircraft, model boat, or rocket, or like-powered toy or model without a permit. And that is the current ordinance with the park system. So there's not, right now we're not proposing changing that at all.
Please state your name and school for the record.
I'm Mary Bradfield from St. Michael Catholic School. I just want to ask, what if we do allow drones, but you do place also the regulations? How do you know that people are also going to follow these regulations? Because sometimes laws can't prevent someone from doing something.
Well, one thing's for us, we have a lot of citizens out in our parks, and these citizens say something, they say something, and they report that type of information to Park Service officers. And so then we'll go out, respond, and assess the situation.
Please state your name and school for the record.
I'm Nora Rosemeyer from New Prague High School, and I had an idea. If we took a safety permit for anyone flying drones, a class you could take to monitor the risks and know proper drone usage, maybe that could eliminate some of the danger that comes with drones, spread awareness for what can happen, and solve some of our problems. Still allow people to use drones for recreational use.
Yeah, I think that's another factor that could be incorporated into a future change in ordinance.
Does anyone else in the audience have any questions? Please state your name and school for the record.
I'm Bella Carlson from Hidden Oaks Middle School. If it is decided that drones are not allowed in parks, where else would drone flyers for recreation go to fly their drones in a safe environment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think we have, people find ways to use them. As Lisa said, the market will adjust.
Please state your name and school for the record.
My name is Jade Lowy. I go to Belle Plaine High School. So for the drones, for the permits or whatever, or motorized or battery-powered toy, would you have to pay a fine if you were caught without a permit, or would they just seize the toy, or what would you do there?
So actually that's a great question. For the existence ordinance, basically you would get issued a $65 citation. You were caught with a drone out in one of our Three Rivers Parks District.
Please state your name and school for the board.
My name is Riley Nordine and I go to Hidden Oaks Middle School. You previously stated that this is a way to bring new people to the parks. Is there other ways besides allowing drones in the parks to bring people to the parks?
We're doing a lot to attract different kids in our community to the parks. We're doing lots of camps. I will say too that apparently our question in the parks table in the showcase it was hard to find the answer. But I did want to highlight that we have archery camps and we have Ninja Warrior camps. We do not have parkour camps. If anybody was wondering what the answer was to our question and couldn't find it. So we're trying a lot of different things to attract younger audiences, and we hope those are working. We're working to do due diligence on that. So. Oh, sorry.
Please state your name and school for the record.
Bethany Urkel, Hidden Oaks Middle School. One thing with the drones is that a lot of people go to the park to enjoy nature, and when you have a drone, you have to focus a lot on not letting it blow away or get out of control or hit someone or get caught in a tree. Are you really enjoying the nature of the park?
Yeah, I think that's an important consideration that that our mission is to make sure that we are allowing people to connect with nature, and I think the board should consider if drone use in the parks is a good way of doing that.
It is time for the board to take action on this item. Is there any action?
I move that. Like this. Thank you. I move that the student board deny a policy that allows drones for personal recreation in Three Rivers Regional Parks in Scott County.
Is there a second to the motion?
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second to deny a policy that will allow drones for personal recreation in Three Rivers Regional Parks in Scott County. Is there any further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Approve or deny a policy that will determine whether or not drones will be allowed for personal recreation in Three Rivers Regional Parks in Scott County. Commissioner Braden.
Aye.
Commissioner Dorian.
Aye.
Commissioner Jeremiah.
Nay.
Commissioner Kadar.
Aye.
Commissioner Rowan.
Aye. The motion passes.
Thank you for your time.
The next item on the agenda is to indicate the county's position on proposed legislation regarding limiting flavors available and raising the legal sale of tobacco to age 21. This item will be presented by Public Health and the Sheriff's Office.
We're just doing a little housekeeping. We'll be right with you. We need one more, but we can do it when we're ready. Oh, you're awesome. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Lori McMillan, and I work with Scott County Public Health. I am here today with Amanda Condon and Deputy Amy Luck, and we are here to look for your support in raising the legal age of purchasing tobacco products to 21. We believe this legislation will help reduce access to tobacco, reduce youth access, or maybe help me talk, to tobacco and vaping products. The Minnesota Department of Health supports statewide efforts to raise the legal age from 18 to 21. Nationally, more than 425 communities in 23 states have adopted a Tobacco 21 policy. Additionally, California, Hawaii, Maine, New Jersey, and Oregon have raised their minimum tobacco sale age to 21 statewide. Why is this needed? According to the 2017 Minnesota Youth Tobacco Survey, 16.2% of middle school students and 47.1% of high school students have said they have tried at least one tobacco product in their lifetime. The 2016 Minnesota Student Survey shows 4.3% of ninth graders and 8.4% of 11th graders have admitted to smoking cigarettes in the past 30 days. But what's most alarming with this data is that it shows the use of e-cigarettes has doubled from that of conventional cigarettes. The same survey shows 9.3% of ninth graders, and 17.1% of 11th graders have admitted to using e-cigarettes in the last 30 days. Nearly all tobacco users start before the age of 21. The Minnesota Department of Health also says teens are especially susceptible to nicotine addiction and the harmful effects nicotine has in the developing brain. When you take a puff from your device, the nicotine makes your heart race, your blood pressure rises, and you start to sweat. Then dopamine, which is a feel-good hormone, kicks in. You might feel a little dizzy, you might feel a little nauseous because your blood sugar may rise, but about 3 minutes later, the dopamine effects wear off, but your brain wants more. So you take another puff, and typical smokers or vapors repeat this step 300 times a day. Your brain gets so wired you can't sleep, so you lay awake at night, and the next morning you get up and start all over again, taking you into the nicotine cycle. Just a minute, please. There we go. After a short period of time, our bodies get used to the nicotine, but they don't only get used to it, they actually need it. Using nicotine in adolescence can harm the part of the brain that controls attention, learning, mood, and impulse control. When we're also looking at seeking support for limiting flavors of tobacco products. In addition to the cigarettes, there are many other devices that are used to inhale nicotine and other dangerous substances. Products like e-cigarette devices, hookahs, and it's not just for marijuana, hookahs, you do use them to smoke nicotine too. Juuls, Sarin drops, and other pod devices. All these products typically contain nicotine. However, the devices that bring the nicotine into your body are not regulated, so that's really unclear as to how much nicotine is in each pod or cartridge that you use. Well, nicotine's effects on the growing brain is why products are not appropriate for young people. The main reason around this request is because so many of the vape flavors are youth-friendly flavors. In fact, 4 of the top 10 vape flavors include unicorn milk, which is a sweet strawberry and whipped cream. And then there's Smurf cake. As an adult, I don't know if I've ever craved a Smurf cake in the last 15 years. Mother's milk, it's a rich, creamy custard strawberry, and I love cookies too. In addition, another small sample of youth-centered flavors include gummy worms, banana split, cotton candy, grape Kool-Aid, sweet tart, Rocket Pops. Who remembers Rocket Pops? It's kind of maybe an age thing, but popsicles, gummy bears, and Skittles. The 2017 Minnesota Youth Survey also said that the first tobacco product, that 80% of teenagers said the first tobacco product they tried was flavored. So let's talk about flavors. I just have a couple questions for the audience and for the commissioners as well, if you'll allow me. How many people think that flavors make a difference in a young person's decision to start vaping? Raise your hands. Okay. And how many people think the flavors appeal to both young people and adults alike? Okay. So I would like to, at this time, have a little unscientific experiment, if I can. We're talking about flavors, but I have a question. Who in here likes jelly beans? Raise your hand if you like jelly beans. Loud and proud. Do you like jelly beans? Okay. Keep your hands up if you like jelly beans. So I would like to do an unscientific experiment, and I need 4 people from the audience. 2 people under the age of 18, and 2 people over the age of 21. So let's see. I'm sorry, what was your name again? Bella. Okay, Bella. And sure, David. Okay, go right ahead, take a seat. And then I need people over 21. Commissioner Beer has volunteered to be a subject. And is there any, okay, come on up. Thank you. Maybe? Okay, so we were talking about, we're talking about flavors, and it seems pretty across the board that we think the flavors are geared towards youth, but we also think that adults and youth alike like the different flavors, okay? So let's talk about jelly beans. We've established you guys all like jelly beans, right? We know they're not the best for us, but we still like them. You know, if you don't eat them a lot, they're okay. You can stop at any time you want. You don't have to eat them all the time. You can stop eating jelly beans whenever you want. So we gave each of you a cup of jelly beans, and they're all yours. You can eat all of them as much as you would like. But I need to tell you one thing first. These aren't your average jelly beans. They are not all what they seem to be. The jelly beans are Bean Boozled jelly beans. Does anybody know what that means? Does everybody know what that means? Yeah. So for example, a brown one, maybe chocolate pudding.
Or dog.
Or canned dog food. The white ones, maybe coconut or spoiled milk. There's a strawberry banana smoothie. It also looks the same as the one that tastes like dead fish. So the question we have for each of you, I'm sorry, what was your name again? David, is it worth the risk to have some jelly beans? And go ahead. I mean, you don't have to eat in front of them, but you can eat them. Is it worth the risk? Yeah? Okay. You want to try it? I don't want to put you on the spot.
We might need the trash can there.
What color? Wait. What color is it? So that's mouthwash or?
Or blueberry. Okay, I'll have that.
Should we put the garbage right? Everybody try it.
This is better than
What, is it Gary? Well, see, the other was mouthwash. So, you know, that was okay. Okay, Bella, your turn. Is it worth the risk? Is that worth that sweetness? You can have that sweet taste of strawberry banana smoothie, and you're saying, nope, I pass. Worth for you. Okay, and that's your pass. I'm Gary. Gary, is it worth the risk? No, you don't want to eat it. It's worth the best jelly bean ever. Commissioner Beer, it's up to you.
Try one of every color.
Is it worth the risk?
I'm glad I didn't do it. No, I'm just saying no. Where's Kathy? Is she in here? I'm just saying no.
Awesome. Thank you guys. I got some free In case you made it, Nikki wanted, Okay, so following our very unscientific experiment, it shows that adults are typically more apt to say, yeah, no, I'm going to pass. Now, our girl Bella, she's like, nah, it's not worth it. But typically, adults are probably more apt to pass on the dangers of vaping for the taste. So, following this unscientific experiment, I ask you to support limiting flavors to cigarette flavor or having them be Bean Boozled flavors so that you never really know what you're going to inhale. Raising the minimum tobacco sale age would limit youth access to tobacco until 21, when the portion of the brain responsible for rational decision making is more developed. This would not only stop young people from using nicotine, it would also save lives. According to the National Academy of Medicine, if the age was raised to 21, 25% less 15 to 17-year-olds would start smoking. And it would prevent 30,000 Minnesota kids from becoming smokers over the next 15 years. You could fit those 30,000 smokers would just about fill up the Twins Target Stadium. Nicotine leads to addiction, lifelong addiction. Using nicotine during teen years can rewire the brain to become more easily addicted to other drugs. When a person is addicted to nicotine, it puts them at risk of becoming a lifetime smoker and exposing them to many harmful chemicals found in cigarettes. None of these chemicals were ever made to be in our body, much less inhaled into our lungs. I lost my last page. The causes of hello. Tobacco use not only can have causes for long-term smokers, but also short-term first-time users as well. I'd like to give a shout out to Dulce Jimenez from Shakopee Caps, who helped put some part of this presentation together, as well as Amanda and Amy. So if you have any questions or comments at this time, or have any about the legalities of it, we'd be more than happy to answer them.
Thank you. Do any of the commissioners have questions about the request?
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Kadar.
So would we be able to limit the flavors available without raising the legal state or the legal sale of tobacco age to 21?
That would certainly be an option. That is not a path that the state itself is going towards right now. They're going more towards limiting the age. But certainly the flavors is something that we're asking for your support to limit the flavors as well.
And then a follow-up question to that, what sort of limitations to the flavors would there be? For example, like what flavors would be allowed versus other flavors?
So we're just gonna model the Bean Boozled and have them be like barf or pineapple. You either get one or the other, so you're taking the extra risk.
And then what would require these companies to have to make it like that?
Like percentage amount, you mean?
Or yeah, but like what would require them to, like, so we would, that would be the law, or?
As long as this gets approved, then they would have to
do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
The chair recognizes Commissioner Braden.
A few points. As you said, you should wait until their brain is more fully developed. Using that logic, shouldn't we wait until they're 25 when the brain is fully developed?
I fully agree with that. However, the other legalities, 21 is the age of maturity. In the eyes of the law, we could certainly, if this board is willing to support it going up to 25, public health would all be out for it, and we'd agree.
And the second thing, many harmful chemicals that enter your bloodstream, when they're mixed with other chemicals, they become stable, as you're taught in basic chemistry. So like the stuff that goes into cigarettes that can kill you if you use them like alone. When they combine with other chemicals, it becomes stable, and while they'll still kill you in the end from cancer, from being cancerogens, they're not going to harmfully hurt you now.
Well, one of the chemicals that's found in the flavoring of 90% of the vaping products is diacetyl. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And that is the flavoring that they banned using unflavored on popcorn, microwave popcorn, because it was causing cancer to workers and just that chemical itself. So I come back with diacetyl is one of the very largest used sweet flavorings that was banned for consumption, but people are inhaling it into their lungs. So I think that chemical itself is dangerous.
Mr. Chair,
The chair recognizes Commissioner Jeremiah.
how much flavors are there for juices for vapes, and do people that know that when they first try it, what's it called, vaping or smoking, do they know like the chemicals / how much nicotine they have inside of it?
The products are labeled. I mean, they have labels on them for how much nicotine is in it. But here is part of the unregulated part of it is that they might say how much nicotine is in a piece of it versus the whole pack. It's not all labeled the same. So the consumer doesn't really have something to compare against the other ones because they don't know how much is in there. And plus, the packaging, the amount of nicotine and other chemicals in it is probably this big versus the unicorn milk and then all this down here. So whether the consumer reads it is a whole nother story.
Mr. Chair. The chair recognizes Commissioner Rowan.
Are there more options for presentations that can be done at schools, such as stating the effects of juuling or smoking at a young age?
I'll give you my card. Yes, public health would be more than happy to do more public education on juuling. Thank you. Great question.
Is there anyone in the audience who has comments or questions on this item? State your name and school for the record.
I'm Bella Carlson. I go to Hidden Oaks Middle School. If you raise the legal age, if many of the people who are using the Juuls are below the age already, how will that change who they get it from? They may get it from an 18-year-old now, but how do you know that they won't just find another 21-year-old to supply their vape or juices for it?
They will still do that. I'm sure of that. So we'll just have to prosecute the law as we do with people that sell to underage people now. And maybe go the route of making the punishment steeper if we see more of it in the future.
Also, as it was with alcohol, it was raised age 21 with the premise that to help it keep it more out of the schools when it went from 18 or 19 to 21.
What are the consequences for teenagers and people that are underage of vaping right now? And how would that change?
You get in trouble.
Yeah, right now, I don't work in the schools, I work on the road, and I have not come across a lot of underage smoking, honestly, so I know you get a citation, but you guys might be able to educate yourselves better on like the cost for the amount that you're charged now, because we don't even see that kind of stuff. Anybody have any friends that got cited for it that know? Nobody would want to admit that.
Please state your name and school for the record.
Jade Lowy, Belle Plaine High School. I think you should raise the age to 21 to make it more difficult for any high schooler to just like give it to their friends, or if they may come to have it in their possession, and like to make it more difficult for people to start vaping or smoking, like remove all flavorings and stuff like that, because the colored packaging I've seen, like it catches your eye, and a younger person, like children you've seen on like tobacco ads, like they think it's candy and they ask if they can take it home or something like that.
Thank you, I agree, thank you. Please state your name and school for the record.
Isabel Androck, Hidden Oaks Middle School. I agree with the limiting of the flavors. However, there's two sides to the side of raising the age. Since people are allowed to vote at 18, I feel that they should have more say in whether they should be allowed to do other harmful things for their body. So I argue that that should not be allowed. But then as tobacco could be seen as an addiction as well as drinking, it could be raised to age 21 too. So I think you need to look at the legality of it and see what the people should really be concerning themselves with. Thank you.
Do you want me to respond or? No, you don't need to. Please state your name and school for the record.
I'm Nora Rosemeyer from New Prague High School. I agree with what most of what you said, except for the fact that you want to change the flavors to Bean Boozled flavors. I think there is a very purposeful thing that the company did when they made them like risky flavors and to attract a younger audience to experience the risk and thrill because they enjoy that kind of thing. I think it would encourage the younger kids to try these flavors and be like, oh, am I gonna get the good one or bad one this time, rather than prevent them, which is what your goal is.
Good point. That was a very good point, thank you. Please state your name and school for the record.
Riley Nordine, Hidden Oaks Middle School. I agree that you should raise the age, but what about 18, 19, and 20-year-olds who are already vaping or smoking and they are buying their own jewels and pods and stuff like that? How would that work for them if the age limit is raised?
They would still have to follow the law. They wouldn't be grandfathered in.
Sadly, we are over time, so it is time for the board to make a decision. Is there any action?
I move that the student board support proposed legislation regarding limiting flavors available and raising the legal sale of tobacco to age 21.
Is there a second to this motion?
A second.
We have a motion and a second to support the proposed legislation regarding limiting flavors available and raising this legal sale of tobacco to age 21. Is there any further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Support or oppose proposed legislation regarding limiting flavors available and raising the legal sale of tobacco to age 21. Commissioner Braden.
Aye.
Commissioner Dorian.
Aye.
Commissioner Jeremiah.
Aye.
Commissioner Kadar.
Aye.
Commissioner Rowan.
Aye. The motion passes.
Thank you.
Next, we have closing remarks. Barb Weckman-Breck, the County Board Chair, has some closing remarks for us.
Thank you. Everybody has done such a great job. I know it's hard to step into these roles. It's hard to come up with questions based on the presentations, and y'all did a really great job with that. As you leave, we're going to dismiss everybody at 1:50 to get down to the buses. Please complete your comment cards. If you haven't done that already, finish those quick. As you exit, staff members will be collecting comment cards and your trivia sheets if you haven't turned in those yet. So please have those ready to go when you exit. Second of all, thanks for being here today. Thanks for participating in this. I hope you stay engaged with what's happening in local government in Scott County. I hope you had fun. And hey, a big thanks to all our employees and mentors for taking the time to be here today. I hope it was good for everyone. So I think there's a little bit of business for the board yet. So go ahead and proceed.
This concludes our business for this meeting. A motion is in order to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
Second the motion.
The Student Board of Commissioner meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your participation.